Oh look, Deck was right all along. Are you surprised? Let's be honest. How's it going, family? I hope you're doing great today, and I'm here to talk about the Bungie post that came out last night about difficulty in Destiny 2. Let's get right into it. Essentially, Bungie agree with a lot of players that the game has gotten way too easy over time, and that's mostly because of the subclass 3.0 changes, the resilience changes, and things of that nature. So here's how they're going to combat it. Adept difficulty is being removed. Hero difficulty will now be available at 1750 power, the soft cap. Legend and Master difficulties can be entered once you hit 1800, the power cap. Activity levels for Season 20, Hero 1770, Legend 1830, Master 1840. They're also adding power level disadvantages to provide a better challenge curve. Hero -5 power levels, Legend -15 power levels, Master -20 power levels, and Grandmaster Nightfalls -25 power levels. They're basically attempting to bring the difficulty levels of Legend closer to the popular Legendary campaign experience and the Master experience closer to Day 1 raids. The power level disadvantages should be familiar to people who've been playing Grandmaster Nightfalls, but if you're not one of them, it's actually kind of simple. Let's say you go into a Legend Nightfall and your power level is 1840. Well, as we learned just a second ago, the Legend power cap will be 1830, so any levels past 1830 will not count. This way enemies will hurt consistently in all Legend activities. As you may guess, I started this video just because there's been a lot of drama about this subject, but to be honest, this is a part I have not seen a lot of complaining about, especially on Reddit, and that's a little bit impressive considering, well, it's Reddit. But how about we talk about it? If you have watched my channel for the past couple of weeks, you would know that I've been dropping videos in which I've been saying that difficulty in the game is pretty low. But on the other hand, I've been praising Heist Battlegrounds and the legendary version of the Seraph Station mission. But I've been doing that for a reason. As a person who's been playing the game at a fairly unhealthy level at this point, I can definitely say that being in more difficult and more challenging content is definitely much more rewarding for me. Now, some people have been complaining because, well, you kinda need to be using a more meta build, or at least a build that is not just for the lows. But at the end of the day, we are playing an RPG shooting game, so there will be meta-defining builds that you should play if you want to be optimal. But Deck, we just want to play wacky builds and have fun. Look, I feel you. Sometimes the game is much more fun when you do something stupid and you enjoy it. But let's be honest, that's not the thing that keeps players engaged for the whole lifetime of a game. And if we're here for the long run, trust me, having more difficult activities will make the game much more fun for you. The people who complain about this are basically just the people who don't want to engage with the game's systems, and I gotta say I have no sympathy for that. Oh wow, such an elitist YouTuber, how can he even say that? Games are made with a purpose, that purpose being to beat the game. So if you don't want to actively engage with the game's systems, that's on you, I'm sorry. It may just sound like I'm saying this for controversy points, but that's really not the case. It's just, once you max out on the game, it really does get more grindy and just not as fun, and having some challenge to the activities will definitely bring the fun back. What about more rewards? A lot of people would say it's justified because the activities are going to get more difficult, but is that really the case? Looking back at the past year and some change, we've been getting nothing but buffs, and that's not even an arguable point. In a sense, Bungie are just bringing content up to our level. Now, I definitely understand why some people would be apprehensive about this, since we've been so powerful for so long. Let's not kid ourselves, the seasonal vendors have been given basically the best guns which are craftable for the past year, and seasonal activities could have been beaten by basically going in naked and shooting blindly, so Bungie definitely set the wrong standards there, and now they're just taking a step back from all the power creep we're accustomed to. At the end of the day, trust me when I say this, I'm sure we're all gonna be fine. I would understand asking for more rewards if we were still in a subclass 2.0 paradigm, but that's just not the case. Unless the game catches up with us, it will just become way too easy and not enjoyable. Now, something that's not new at this point, but still important and something that we should talk about, match game is being removed. Mismatched shields will now take 50% less damage across the whole game. No complaints here, match game was kind of annoying anyways, so good riddance. But is match game really being removed, or are we going to get match game with extra steps? Let's find out. Burns and high-level activities will now be split into surges and threats. Surges will increase the damage you deal by 25% and will rotate weekly and seasonally. The featured surge for Season of Defiance will be Strength, with the weekly rotating surges being Solar and Void. As for threats, they will increase the elemental damage you receive from enemies by 25%. High-level activities will now feature overcharged weapons. An overcharged weapon will deal 25% more damage. This, however, will not stack with surges. So if you're using an SMG with the SMGs being featured, which is also Solar, with Solar being featured, you will not get double buffs. The overcharged weapons will either be defined by the activity or will be the ones which are featured as champion counters in the seasonal artifact. Combatants will now be harder to stagger and their health will be increased across the board. Bungie say this is to compensate for Surge and Overcharge. And this is where I come to an agreement with a big part of the community. Yes, Bungie are removing match game, which is really cool. But now it feels like we're getting match game with extra steps with the Surge and Overcharge system. A lot of people when seeing this change are thinking not that 2 subclasses will get a damage buff, but instead 2 subclasses will get a damage nerf. And that is something I can understand, I'm not gonna lie. People who do play the endgame do want to play it with all of the buffs at their disposal, and they try to play it optimally. I can see where Bungie was going with this, but the community is taking this more as if you're playing Arc or Stasis, you're throwing the game. I have been in LFG groups where they would say if you're not using the burn to your advantage, we'll just kick you out. And I know how it feels, you just want to wild out with your Arc Punch Hunter, but the burn is now void, so you gotta go invis and you're not even asked. On top of that, if we consider all of the build crafting changes that we're getting and basically all of the build variety that we're receiving, why would we get a change like this? Personally, I don't know, to be honest. At this point, it seems like it will be more restrictive than anything and is not something I can understand or get behind. I do think it's high time for Bungie to just let players choose their own subclass and enjoy it. The idea behind this decision does seem to have been to make the game fresh for people and make them try other subclasses than the ones they're accustomed to. But if that was the case, why just not rotate the subclasses weekly between all of the subclasses throughout the entire season? I just don't get it. And honestly, for variety's sake, I think that's the direction Bungie should go in the future. As it stands now, it's not a popular idea and I can definitely see why. How about what's not changing? Well, equipment is still locked on Legend and Master difficulties as well as GM Nightfalls. Matchmaking is still only available on Hero difficulty, closed on Legend, Master and GMs. Modifiers which affect enemy types like Fire Pit for example, or Fireteam Coordination like Chaff and Togetherness will also stay the same. Champion availability will stay the same, as well as Grandmaster Nightfalls will still have the revive limitations and wipe conditions. All of that is cool, the only thing I dislike is that matchmaking will stay unavailable for Legend difficulty activities because, well, they're required for triumphs and I don't understand why we don't have matchmaking for them. Other than that, we're all good, so let's move on. Lake of Shadows and Arms Dealer will be updated with new enemies, new encounters, new mechanics and objectives, so they won't be as sparrowable as they are now. Other strikes are being adjusted, like for example the Exodus Crash and the Inverted Spire, so their presence in the Vanguard's Ops playlist will be dramatically reduced and they won't appear as weekly featured Nightfalls. The Season 16 and 19 battlegrounds will become a part of the Vanguard's Ops playlist. The playlist itself is now going to be power disabled like Gambit and the Crucible, which means you won't have any advantage over enemies and they will have no advantages over you no matter what your power level is. Which honestly brings the question of why even have power levels at this point, but I guess we'll tackle that later on, right, Bungie? Possibly? Maybe? Daily rotators and weekly singes will be removed and replaced with one random weekly surge, one random daily threat, one daily random modifier from their best of collection, including subtle falls, lightning crystals, and more. Oh, that sounds cool, and honestly, the Vanguard Ops playlist has always been something that you do for the pinnacles and then forget about, so now maybe it will be a little bit more interesting. They're also going to add scoring to the Vanguard Ops playlist, which will be similar to the Nightfall scoring. The interesting part is that the score you receive will actually have an impact on your Vanguard rank multiplier. You will have a 1x multiplier on the Vanguard rank you earn for getting below 30,000 points. Then the multiplier increases every 5,000 points after the initial 30. The largest available multiplier will be 7x for getting over 250,000 points, and this will apply to all Vanguard modes including Nightfalls. And I gotta be fair, this is not a change which gets me excited or even riled up to talk about. It's just, wow, we get Vanguard scoring and that will affect our loot in a ooh, big deal. What would have me much more excited is if a high score in a strike meant that you would get a strike specific gun. For example, getting 150k or more on Arms Dealer would guarantee you getting an ignition code or any other gun from Dares of Eternity, since the loot pool is just so huge. That way strikes would have strike specific loot and we would have a deterministic way of finding the guns that we actually want to find. As it stands now, meh. Next, Bungie talk about master raids and dungeons, and they say that for them there will be one overcharged weapon, 2 surges, no threat modifiers, and combatants will not have the increased health or increased stagger resistance. They say that they want to bring them in line with other master experiences without the need for build crafting towards surges or overcharges, which I think people will do anyways. This isn't really a huge change and I don't see it as something worth talking about. And to finish it all off, Lost Sectors, Nightmare and Empire Hunts, weekly campaign missions, Dares of Eternity and Wellspring and Seasonal Battlegrounds playlist will experience similar changes to what we talked about in the difficulty discussion at the start of the video, and you should be seeing screenshots of the specifics as I'm talking. And that's pretty much it about the post. In conclusion, I do want to say that I agree with a lot of the points that Bungie were making about the difficulty of the activities. I am just not a fan of that surge and overcharge system, and we'll see how it plays out, but I do hope that Bungie change it and make it so the weekly rotating surges will just rotate between all of the available subclasses except for the one which is the seasonal rotating one. I also don't particularly care about the Vanguard scoring because it doesn't seem like it will be that much of a big deal. And honestly, I was really hoping to get some of the weapons out of the Dares pool and put them in specific strikes, which would make the strikes more fun. The general Vanguard difficulty change seems like it will be a good one because, well, now we won't just sparrow through all of them, and that will at least have us engage with the content. The Master Raid and dungeon changes don't seem like something that will impact us a lot, so meh. And the changes to all the other miscellaneous activities do seem like something which will breathe a new life into them. Hopefully. But that's about it for the video. If you enjoyed it, make sure you hit the like and make sure you sub to my channel with notifications turned on. That way you won't miss any of the Destiny news. See you out there, Guardian.